Hello, all. Today's topic of discussion is Latin American revolutions. Now, I'm not going to go extremely in depth into all the various revolutions, but this is just to get you to have general idea of what these revolutions entailed. So we're going to be talking about the Haitian, Latin, or excuse me, South American, and then also the Mexican a little bit. Now, I do have some other notes that go a little bit more in depth on the Mexican Revolution, which we'll see a little bit later on. So something to think about while we're going over this is how did the American Revolution inspire political changes in Latin America? So some of the, think of some of the reasons why America decided to have its own revolution against the British. How does that apply to these Latin American revolutions? Because of the success of the American Revolution, other countries were beginning to see that it was possible to get rid of the yoke of their European mother countries. So if we look at the Latin American countries, of course, we do see Portugal, we do see Spanish still in control of a lot of these areas. Prior to the revolutions, we see different levels of society. Now, these different levels do progress after the revolts also. So don't think this just goes away because the revolts happen. So at the very top, we do see Peninsulares. These are people who were born in Spain or Portugal. Below that, we see Creoles. Creoles, of course, they are of Spanish heritage or Portuguese heritage. And these two classes, for the most part, control the land. They control a lot of the wealth and most of the businesses also. Now, below that, we have mestizos. Mestizos are of mixed heritage, so peninsulares or Creole, and then also native populations. They're the very largest part of the society here, and they're one of the lowest classes that we see. So, for the most part, servants and laborers. Because the Creoles were typically educated in a lot of Spanish schools or Portuguese schools, if you will, they knew of ideas of revolution. Okay, they studied the American Revolution, they studied the French Revolution, and they saw a lot of these freedoms that they didn't have in comparison to those other countries I just spoke of, or those other revolutions that I spoke of. So things like a free press, free trade. The Spanish didn't want to see free trade because, of course, if free trade gets opened up, Spain itself, the mother country, isn't making as much money through their colonies as they would have before. So they resented this colonial control of trade. Now, if we look at the Peninsulares, they typically resided only for a short time in Latin America and then went back to the peninsula. So the peninsula we're talking here, of course, is the Iberian Peninsula, which comprises Spain, a little bit of France, and Portugal. So that's where we get this term, Peninsulares. So they're just really coming here to the Americas to gain some wealth and then to go back to their country. The Creole elites do not like being controlled by Spain and Portugal. They don't see themselves having this relationship with the mother country lasting for very long in light of the various revolutions that, of course, have happened prior to this point. When we look at what's going on in Europe, we have the Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars took a lot of resources from all European countries. Napoleon wanted to go out, he wanted to conquer the majority of Europe, and for the most part, he did to a certain point. And because of this, Spain and Portugal they were tied up. So because they were tied up with these actions in Europe, they kind of neglected their holdings in their colonial possessions of America. The first revolution that we need to mention is the Haitian Revolution. One of the reasons that we see the Haitian Revolution being so successful is the amount of, well, two groups of people. One, the large amount of slaves that we see, but also there's a very large population of what was referred to as free colored people on the island of Saint Domingue. So when we look at this island, it is broken up into two portions. One was Spanish controlled, one was French controlled, right down the middle, and we have some different characters in play here, but I want to focus mainly on this Haitian Revolution. So because of these large populations of slaves and free colored people, of course, they do unite and they take control of the island. Very, very successful revolution, and also inspired some slave revolts in America prior to the Civil War. So after this revolution, Haiti now becomes the first independent state in Latin America. I didn't want to go super in depth with the Haitian Revolution. There is a great crash course video based upon this. What I'd like for you to do is take 1-minute notes. So for each minute that plays, write at least one sentence based upon the Haitian Revolution crash course video. As stated earlier, I'm not going to go that far in depth with the Mexican Revolution because we have a separate set of notes that will go a little bit further in depth. But just to get the gist of it, if you will, we start with Miguel Hidalgo. He was a Catholic priest, and he saw a lot of the ills of what the Spanish government was doing in Mexico. So he went to the mestizos and, wanted to get them to rise up. Remember, the encomienda system was something that was really weighted towards the upper class. So anybody who was on the lands of these encomiendas were almost like slaves, not quite like slaves, but pretty similar to it. Now, these included natives, mestizos, almost like the old feudal system. So he led an armed attack against the Spaniards. These are farmers, using very rudimentary weapons. They really didn't have that much of a chance against trained Spaniards. He was defeated, executed, but he was really a driving force of the Mexican underprivileged or the underclass. So September 16th, this is the actual date of Mexico's Independence Day. It's not Cinco de Mayo. In 1821, Mexico declares its independence from Spain. This is by Iturbide. He names himself Emperor of Mexico, and as you can imagine, a lot of the Creole elite really didn't like this idea of him being an emperor. Okay, they're about rights. They're about the French Revolution, the American Revolution. They didn't want to see another monarch in their midst. So after he was deposed, which was pretty quickly after, he named himself emperor. Mexico became a republic. If we go further down south into South America, we have two main characters here. We have San Martin and Simon Bolivar. So Martin is from Argentina. Bolivar is from Venezuela. San Martin, he wanted to remove the Spanish from his area, not just his area, but all of South America. He starts in Argentina and frees Argentina, actually goes over the mountains and goes into Chile. So from Argentina, let's get our little clicker. So if we look right here, we see Argentina, and then over here, Chile, we have the Andes mountain range, of course, that runs along here. The Spanish never thought he would jump over the Andes mountains, not jump over, but figuratively speaking, jump over the Andes mountains, hit Chile, and then go up and end up meeting with Bolivar. And through this, Chile gets taken over up to Peru, takes over the Spanish in Lima. Lima is the capital of South America. And then, of course, when he meets up with Bolivar, they ally. Bolivar takes over for the most part, and we have the Spanish out of South America. There is some talk in Europe about reinstating these colonies, going back with force, taking over these colonies. But Great Britain at this point has really industrialized, and they want raw materials. And they can't trade, or they don't want to trade with Spain and getting the raw materials from Spain because you're going through multiple parties. So if they could just trade directly with these Latin American countries, their costs for trade would significantly go down because now Spain is out of the picture. So Great Britain did not want to see this. As time progresses, the U.S. also doesn't want to see Europe involved in Latin America, and the U.S. comes up with what's referred to as the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine If we look at these different cartoons, we see some barbed wire around the Americas. This political cartoon basically stating, Europe, keep out. We will protect our Latin American brothers and sisters. If we look over here at this one as well, we're over here, and Europe, you guys stay over in your area. Which, for the most part, works to an extent. Of course, the countries in Europe, they are industrializing or industrialized, and they want these raw materials. When we look at the revolts overall, we need to think about this question. Why did Europeans make such distinctions among Creoles, mestizos, and mulattoes? Why would we want to see this? And I didn't bring up that term mulatto, but mulatto are Europeans from African descent. So very similar to mestizos, but a mixture of African descent. Any new nation who starts new, they have to focus on organization. Where is the country's borders going to be? How are we going to build up our infrastructure? Because any vibrant economy needs a solid infrastructure. Whether it's, if we're looking modern times anyways, we're looking at electricity, dams, bridges. Back then, it more has to do with railroads being very, very important. Roads that don't wash out by a simple rainstorm. You need this infrastructure in order to consolidate your country. So because of the lack of this infrastructure that we see in Latin America, they become dependent upon Europe and also the United States, which is something we don't want to see for any country. You want to be self-sufficient as much as possible. Europe and the United States, however, they don't want to see these countries become economically independent. If they do, they can dictate the prices of what they're willing to pay for certain goods, because if they're making their own goods, why do they need to go to Europe to get those goods? Why do they need to go to the United States to get those goods? A good example of U.S. intervention, if we look at the Panama Canal, we want this Panama Canal built. The U.S. wants this Panama Canal built in order to make it easier to trade with anywhere in Asia. So if you want to go from the East Coast over to Asia, it's a lot easier instead of going all the way around South America. So by building this canal, we can trade much, much easier. However, it's in a sovereign nation. At that time, it was Colombia. Panama ended up breaking off because of some intervention down there by the U.S. You'll get more of that during your U.S. history course. And because of this, because of this intervention, a distrust between the U.S. and many Latin American countries start to emerge, or have been there for a while, but this just kind of perpetuates that. At this point, colonialism's gone. We don't see colonialism. However, we do see this form of what's referred to as new imperialism, where countries in Latin America, third world countries they're referred to sometimes, are just completely dependent upon others. Now, another issue that we see in Latin America is a lot of the society, it's controlled by the landed elite. Those who own the land are still in control of the people. So it's not necessarily encomiendas, but remnants of that encomienda system is still rampant in Latin America. Go ahead and read this question, think about it, and go ahead and come up with an answer. After the year 1870, many Latin American countries are writing constitutions in order to give rights to all of their citizens. We also have some other issues that are going on. Spain is still in control of some areas, and other Europeans are still in control of some other areas in Latin America, Puerto Rico and Cuba being one of these. Because of the Mexican-American War, this is no longer the case. The U.S. does have some investment in South America, and the U.S. does end up trying to protect these holdings with military might. Revolution tends to be a long process in Mexico, so just a little bit more about them. We do see that landed elite really holding on to power, and this, of course, initiates another revolution in Mexico. Okay, go ahead and answer this question.